Good luck to you flying blind on this.
Thank you. It's not the first time. One time I had Caroline Janey on, and it was about her book, I think on memory or something like that. And I went to the bookstore, I got the book, and I came home and I read the chapter that she told me to read. And I start the interview and I start, doing my setup and everything. And I get to the question and it's her turn to answer. And she's like, wait a minute, did you read my book? And I go, what do you mean? And she's like, what book did you read? And I looked at the book for the first time, looked at the authors, and it was another book by the same name by two other authors. And I said, oh my God, Carrie, I just looked at the title. I didn't even see. And she's like, see, that's why I told my publisher not to name it that, because there was already a book with that name. And I go, well, let's talk about your book anyway. And then we had a great interview. People loved it.
Let's just talk.
Yeah, that's what I do best, I think. All right, so let's get her started here.
So, Ron, what is this book about anyway?
Basically, yeah, that's pretty much how it starts. All right, here we go.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, patrons. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today I have an old friend back on the show to talk about a new book that he has out. It's called Tell Mother Not to Worry, Soldier Stories from Gettysburg's George Spangler Farm. The author is none other than the great Ron Kirkwood. Hello, Ron. How are you?
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Fine. So this isn't, as I told you before, this isn't the first time this has happened, but just so the audience knows, this is another one of those episodes where I am woefully ill-prepared. I was waiting for a copy of the book, and Ron had said there was no copy when the not appointment. What's the word? When this was scheduled, and so Ron sent digital copies to Dave, and Dave forwarded them to me. But just like a few weeks ago, this happened actually with another book. I remembered that the person had sent it once they told me, no, remember I sent it to you. And that same thing happened today with Ron. And I go, oh yeah, I do remember that. And so Dave and I need to work on a way to better coordinate that stuff. Maybe I should just print it out when I'm done. I don't know. That's the problem when you schedule things so far out. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is we're flying by the seat of our pants today. We have an outline that we're going off of, and Ron's easy to talk to, so I think we'll be okay. And
I'll carry you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's start first. This is your second book. Is this a follow-up to?
This is a sequel. The first book was Too Much for Human Endurance. In that book, I covered all of the medicine. In fact, you and I talked about a chapter on medicine previously.
I love that stuff.
A lot of soldier stories, the nurses, the military importance of the farm that had never been established. The George Spangler owned the most important farm militarily in the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, this one is a sequel. I repeat very little. Some of the same cast and characters are there. If I need to flush out a story to let people know what happened to them in the first book, I might repeat it. Armistead is in this book in an important way. I talk about Powers Hill because I think that's underrated and even overlooked as militarily important in the battle. But the main thing is it's called Tell Mother Not to Worry, Soldier Stories from Gettysburg's George Spangler Farm. What happened to mom and dad back home when their 18-year-old son, who had been supporting them before the war, working 2 jobs, giving all the money to them, he dies? How do they survive that? What did they need? What did the government do to step in to help them a little bit? Anyway, you get a look at the families of the soldiers who were at Spangler. It's not all just Spangler in this book. It's the family members back home and how they were suffering and what they went through.
So Spangler Farm is kind of like the springboard for these other stories, right?
In some cases it is.
Yeah.
One chapter in particular, The Loved Ones Left Behind, it just talks about all of those guys in that chapter died. And I talk about the pensions that the government stepped in with to help them. $8 a month if you were a private, $30 a month as a colonel. It talks about how a 62-year-old and 51-year-old parents were described as aged and couldn't work, and how they needed the money, and they would have to prove they couldn't work. They would have to get testimony. They would have to go before the district justice. They would have to prove they were married. The mother would have to prove why she depended on her son, who is now dead, who gave her money before the war and gave her money every month during the war. And that's the loved ones left behind. There are many cases where a soldier got married. A week later, he was gone. And they never had kids. There were many cases where the couple got married, and a couple weeks later, he was gone, and he never knew his son or daughter. So, these sad stories, when you think about these kids, they never got to experience kids, grown up life, grandkids. They sacrificed all. And for the stories I'm telling, it's these guys that happened to them at the George Spangler farm. So as with anything really, the stories I'm telling here, you could probably find the same stories at any other hospital, but it involved a lot of pension search at the archives in Washington, D.C. I think I was down there 17, 18 days. And when you read through their pensions, it's really sad. And they're describing their conditions to the district justice who will make the decision. These are some hurting families, and no father, no husband, no son now, 3-4 kids to raise. How am I going to survive? One woman, her husband died at Spangler. She had 4 daughters, and she farmed them all out. She says, my life is one of misery only. And
can you imagine? Yeah, that's got to be the toughest thing for a mother to have to do, And that happened a few times as well, like when George Nixon died, Richard Nixon's great-grandfather. He had 9 kids, one of whom died the day after he died, but his wife farmed a couple of them out, and then a couple of years later, she died, and they all got farmed out. Wow. One of his kids died the day after he did.
Yeah.
That poor woman. So,
and then she died 2 years after that.
Oh, God. So you said before that the soldiers who died, obviously you called them kids, and they never got to experience their children, grandchildren, all these things that most people take for granted. That's just a natural part of life, is I'm going to have kids, I'm going to have grandkids, I'm going to get old and die, and then they're going to say, oh, grandpa was great. Yep. And that was it. These guys never even really got out of their teens or 20s.
Never got out of their teens, a lot of them.
Yeah. And so that stuff must have been just foreign to them. No idea what that would have been like, and they never got to do it. And I always think about that because now, I guess I'm old enough to, if I was around back then, I'd be some politician or a general if I was going to be involved with this stuff, because I'm 46 now. And so these guys are in some half my age or more than half my age. And the things that they missed out on that I got to experience, even the bad things, the broken hearts and this, and maybe they had broken hearts. I'm sure they did, but just all that stuff. And there's times where I'll go on the battlefield and I'll sit and I'll just think about that. And whenever I, usually it's when I have I'm feeling down or I'm overwhelmed or something like that. And I'm like, my life sucks. And then I'll just go, I don't know why, but I always go to the McPherson barn. I'm not sure what draws me there. But I'll go and I'll go out into the field, like in the valley between the 2 McPherson ridges. Cause I guess nobody really comes out there. So I could be alone. And there's the concrete cover of, I guess it's the well or something that was there. And I'll sit there, I'll bring a chair and I'll sit there and I'll just sit and think and stare at whatever. And I always think about, maybe right where I'm sitting or right near here, somebody breathed his last and he was a boy compared to me and he experienced nothing. And he didn't know what he was missing out on because he was too young and naive. Yeah. And he thought, wow, what an adventure and everything that got him into this. And now he's probably like, what the hell was I doing?
I think your and my reaction to this is the way the reaction should be.
I do too.
We're getting to experience these things, and these poor kids didn't.
Yeah.
And you could go to any barn on that battlefield, Trossel, Sherfy, Henry Spangler, George Spangler, all of that happened at all of those places. And go anywhere.
And you know, we I guess we are initially, or at least for me, I shouldn't say I am initially having these thoughts while learning about Civil War soldiers, but that goes for any war, you know, and a lot of the experiences and interactions I have with veterans of the recent wars, it's obviously they're the ones that survived, but they tell me these stories that are just horrendous. And, you know, I feel for them too, because all the hardships I had in my life while they're over there pale in comparison to, I can't even fathom how they're able to function. And I say this to my one friend all the time. I'm like, you know, you tell me these stories and I'm like, how are you not like insane?
I think that's why books like this, Tell Mother Not to Worry, I think that's why they're important. This is how a father survived or didn't survive. This is how a mother survived or didn't survive when a child was killed at war. It just didn't end it when he died. I have one guy in this book. He was supporting his father, a stepmom, brothers and sisters, and stepbrothers and sisters. He was supporting 8 people. And I think he was like 15 years old. I don't remember exactly. And then he goes off to war and he's sending money home to still help out. But he dies. So, and then the dad got an $8 pension a month after that. You know, that's not going to cover everything the kid did. No. A lot of these kids were 11, 10, 12 years old when they started working because their parents couldn't work or because dad was died.
Yeah.
They just did it. They knew they had to do it.
And the kids that age today, the 15-year-olds today, if they have to go get a job so they could pay their car insurance when they get their license, they cry the blues. It's like, you have no idea, kid.
This puts everything in perspective about how easy. Things aren't always easy here, and things aren't always right. But if you compare what these guys in this book went through and what their parents went through, there is no comparison, and that's why we love history. That's why I love history, is the experiences. We didn't have to live through the things that they did, but I'd like to know what they lived through and how did that generation get us to this generation.
Well, that's it. The hardships of the one make it a little easier for the next, and they'll have their own hardships, which will make it easier for the next. And so, yeah, you have different, you know, the title though of the book, Tell Mother Not to Worry, is it's such a funny phrase, because what mother will not worry just because you say don't?
And when these kids are dying, 9 times out of 10, they're thinking of their mother, and they don't want her to worry. I have 3 or 4 instances in the book, variations of the Tell Mother Not to Worry thing, and in every case they died. So she had every right to worry.
You know, that's the one thing that always stabs me right in the heart when I read it is these accounts of these wounded or dying boys crying for their mothers. And it reminds you that these guys are boys. They're barely out of adolescence in many cases. They're thrown into a man's situation. They're made men very quickly, but when it comes down to it, and there's that catastrophe that the body is going through as it's wounded and dying, they're boys. And I say that, but I don't know. Maybe I'd cry for my mom too at my age right now if I was shot. I don't know. I haven't been, and I hope I never am. But it's just that one thing that just punches you in the gut every time you hear it. Do you ever watch Deadwood?
No. Haven't watched Deadwood.
So it's
I hear it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't like bawdy stuff, then stay away from Deadwood. But if you do, it's fantastic. And there's the camp's doctor is a former Civil War surgeon, and there's this one scene that every time. In fact, I was just watching it again the other night, and I fell asleep, and I woke up as this scene was playing, and it always makes me want to cry because he can't handle what he's
All right. Hey, did you know, girls, Colby, everybody, that there are almost 300 audio shows and almost 100 video shows on our Patreon page?
That's pretty awesome.
Did you know that several respectable licensed Battlefield guides are patrons?
Wow.
But they've asked to remain nameless so as to not ruin their reputation.
That's not true.
Are they embarrassed by you?
Yes, that's the point.
They're not. That's not true.
It's true. Just
No.
ask Ralph or
was
Rob or
Charlie.
Jason. Patreon now allows, or Lewis, I won't say their last names. Patreon now allows you, ladies and gentlemen, to have a 7-day free trial. Now, I could choose whatever level I wanted. I could have chosen the level where you get the least amount of perks, but I said no. I'm going to give them the best value level, which would be the second lieutenant, because you get all of the audio shows for the month. So you get that for 7 days, 7-day free trial. Might go away for a while. I'll bring it back, and I'll go away, bring it back. But right now it's there. If you're not sure that you want to join. And it also allows you to purchase individual episodes. This is a new thing that they've allowed. Now I got to go through all the episodes and put them on there. Yeah, and open it up. It's cheaper if you become a monthly member. You can also have annual subscriptions. There's a discount if you do that. And did you know, ladies and gentlemen, that 908 out of 909 college sophomores agree that you can't say you're fully prepared for the guide exam without having consumed all of Addressing Gettysburg's Patreon content. How do you do that? Become a second lieutenant. Guys, these are college sophomores. Okay? They know everything. They know everything. Just watch the news, watch TikTok. They will tell you. That's it. That's it. Go to patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg to become a patron. I was going to say a licensed Battlefield guide. That's not what you become if you do that. Become a patron. Addressing Gettysburg. Patreon.com/Addressing Gettysburg. Do it. Just do it and make Bethany happy, okay?